The first time I saw Wade, he had his hand wrapped around Emily's wrist in a crowded backyard, with a United States flag behind him and a World Cup game playing through the open patio doors. He laughed like everyone there belonged to him, then looked at me and said, "Don't waste your smile, man. She already knows where home is." Emily did not pull away, but her face changed, just long enough for me to see shame pass through her eyes before she covered it with a tight smile. That was not jealousy. That was a warning delivered in public. My name is Jeff, and I had only gone to Erie for the long weekend because my co-worker Marcus would not stop talking about his family watch party. His Aunt Linda cooked for half the block, the television stayed on all day, and everyone acted like the World Cup belonged to their street. I was single, tired of working 6 days a week at the credit union and looking for a break. I had passed through Erie before, but I had never stayed there, and a weekend full of food and noise sounded harmless. That was the first wrong assumption I made. We reached Linda's house on a Friday afternoon. Red, white, and blue streamers were tied to the porch railings. A cooler sat open beside the garage, and a paper sign on the fence said, "Youth Soccer World Cup Fundraiser." I noticed the QR code under the words because I worked around accounts and payment processes every day. Inside, Linda hugged Marcus like he had returned from overseas instead of a 5-hour drive. She hugged me too, fed me before I could set my bag down, and introduced me to so many relatives that half their names slipped away immediately. Then Emily walked in carrying a tray of burger buns, and the room seemed to slow without asking my permission. She was not dressed to impress anybody. Jeans, a white blouse, hair pinned up loosely, no dramatic entrance. But she had that kind of face you keep looking at, because every expression feels honest before she can hide it. When Linda introduced us, Emily smiled and said she had heard Marcus worked with somebody from Columbus who understood soccer. I said I understood enough to yell at the television with confidence. She laughed, and I felt it in a place I had no business feeling anything. She helped Linda in the kitchen, carried plates outside, fixed a crooked banner, and kept glancing toward the driveway like she was expecting a storm. I thought maybe she was waiting for a boyfriend. I found out I was almost right when Marcus and I walked to pick up extra ice. I asked him, trying to sound casual, if Emily was one of his cousins. He gave me that side look men give when they know exactly why you asked. He said she was his cousin by marriage, sort of, and that she had been living with Wade for almost a year. The name hit me before the man did. I asked if Wade was her husband. Marcus shrugged and said not legally, but close enough for trouble. Then he lowered his voice and said, "Nobody likes him, Jeff. He acts friendly when there are cameras around, but he is poison when people stop clapping." I should have let that sentence kill the interest right there. Instead, it planted a question I could not shake. Why would a woman like Emily live with a man everybody spoke about, like a bad debt? Back at the house, the party had grown. Neighbors came through the side gate. Kids kicked a ball against the fence. Somebody had dragged a television onto the patio so people could watch from outside. The fundraiser table sat near the grill with a plastic jar for cash and a clipboard for raffle tickets. The prize was 2 tickets to a local professional match and a signed jersey. Wade's name was printed at the top of the flyer. Then Wade arrived. He came in loud, the kind of loud that makes a room adjust itself. 2 men walked behind him, Blake and Travis, both wearing matching fundraiser shirts. Wade wore a crisp US jersey and a smile that looked practiced in a mirror. He kissed Linda on the cheek, slapped Marcus on the back, and somehow made everyone laugh. Emily went stiff near the kitchen doorway. Wade saw me talking to her and crossed the yard like he had been waiting for a reason. He did not ask who I was. He told me. He said, "You must be Marcus's bank buddy." I said credit union, but he waved it away. Then he put his hand around Emily's wrist and made that comment. A few people laughed because they did not know what else to do. Emily looked down at the grass. I looked at his fingers on her wrist, then at his face. He smiled harder, like he wanted me to notice and wanted me to do nothing. That was when I understood Wade did not just want Emily. He wanted an audience for owning her. I backed off because I had no right to start a fight inside another family's gathering over a woman I had met that afternoon. I told myself that was maturity, but another part of me knew I had just watched something ugly and chosen silence. Later, When the U.S. scored and the backyard exploded, I stepped onto the front porch to call my mother because I had forgotten to tell her I arrived safely. When I ended the call, Emily was there with 2 plastic cups. She handed me one and asked if my girlfriend was checking on me. I told her it was my mother. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Then she asked if I had a girlfriend back in Columbus. I said no. She nodded, like that answer mattered more than it should have. I should have gone back inside. Instead, I asked if she was okay. The question seemed to hit a bruise. She looked toward the backyard and said, Wade hated when she talked to people he did not control. Then she laughed softly, like she regretted saying it out loud. I asked how long they had been together. She said 11 months, maybe 12, depending on which apology counted as a new beginning. That was not a joke. It was a map of damage. Before I could answer, Wade's voice cut from the doorway. He asked Emily if she was giving private tours now. She flinched so slightly someone else might have missed it, but I saw it. He walked out with Blake behind him, and the porch air changed. Wade looked at my cup, then at Emily's, and said, "Careful, Jeff. She likes attention, then acts surprised when men get ideas." Emily's face burned red. I said nobody had ideas. Wade grinned and said that was good, because some women looked single only when it helped them. Blake laughed 1 second too late, like a man following instructions. I wanted to tell him exactly what I thought of him. Instead, Emily whispered that we should go back in before Linda noticed. Wade heard her and said, "See? She knows how to behave." That sentence stayed in the porch light. The rest of the night, I tried to keep distance. Emily did not make that easy. She was not flirting loudly. She was doing something worse, catching my eye for 1 second at a time, and then looking away like she hated herself for needing anyone to see her. Wade kept performing. He sold raffle tickets, posed for photos with donors, and told everyone the money was for kids whose parents could not afford travel soccer fees. People gave him cash, scanned the code, and thanked him for caring. I noticed Emily never touched the fundraiser table. Not once. When the party ended, Wade left before her, irritated about something on his phone. Emily stayed to help Linda clean up. I carried trash bags to the curb with Marcus, and he muttered that Wade always disappeared when real work started. I asked about Blake and Travis. Marcus said they were Wade's boys, always around when money was being collected, never around when somebody asked for receipts. That was the first time the fundraiser stopped looking like charity and started looking like cover. I left Erie the next afternoon with Marcus. Emily hugged me goodbye in Linda's kitchen. It should have been quick and polite, but it lasted half a breath too long. Wade was not there, but somehow I still felt watched. On the drive back to Columbus, Marcus told me not to get pulled into anything. He said Emily had a good heart, but Wade made everything around him dirty. I told him nothing had happened. He said that was not always enough. For 3 days, nothing did happen. I went back to work and tried to act like I was not thinking about a woman on a porch in Erie. Then Marcus came to my desk on Wednesday morning with a look that told me my quiet was over. He said Emily had left Wade. I stared at him like he had said the roof came off the building. He said she had packed 2 bags, gone to Linda's house, and refused to go back. Wade had shown up at midnight, pounding on the door, yelling that she was embarrassing him during fundraiser week. Linda called her brother, and Wade finally left. Then Marcus said the part that made my stomach drop. Emily had asked for my number. I told him not to give it to her, then I told him to wait, then I hated both answers. Marcus watched me struggle and said, "Man, she left because of him, not because of you, but he is going to tell everybody different." He was right. By Friday, Wade had already started. The first message came from a number I did not know. It said I must feel real proud stealing another man's woman during a charity event. I did not answer. The second message included a photo of me and Emily on the porch, taken from inside the house through the screen door. We were standing apart, but the angle made it look closer. Under the photo, Wade wrote, "You don't know what she owes." That was not heartbreak talking. That was leverage. I showed Marcus. His face went flat. He said Wade probably had Blake or Travis take the picture, because Wade loved proof, even when proof did not prove anything. I blocked the number. 10 minutes later, Another message came from a different one. This time it said, "Ask her about the accounts before you play hero." I did not know what accounts meant, but I knew enough not to ignore the word. Emily called me that night from Linda's kitchen. Her voice was low, like she was afraid the walls could repeat her. She apologized before I said hello. I told her she did not need to apologize for leaving a man who treated her like property. She went quiet. Then she said, Wade had always been good at making her feel like every exit was theft. I asked about the accounts. The silence after that question told me the word had landed. She said Wade had used her name for fundraiser paperwork because his credit was bad, and according to him, people trusted her more. She had signed a form 2 months earlier, after he told her it was just for a temporary payment account. She had not seen statements. She had not handled money. He said it was all for the kids. I asked if she had copies. She said no. Wade kept everything in a folder and snapped at her whenever she asked. Emily was no longer just a woman trying to leave a bad man. She was the clean name on a dirty operation. I told her to write down everything she remembered. Dates, names, what she signed, who was present, what Wade said. She asked if I thought she was in trouble. I did not want to scare her, but I would not lie. I said if money moved under her name and she did not control it, she needed proof that she was not part of it. She breathed like she had been hit. I hated Wade then. Not for having her first, not for embarrassing me, not for threatening me. I hated him because he had turned her trust into paperwork. The next morning, Emily came to Columbus with Linda and Marcus. She said she needed to get away for a few days. Linda had a sister outside the city, Carol, who agreed to let Emily stay in her spare bedroom. I met them at a diner because Emily did not want to come to my apartment and give Wade another story to twist. She looked exhausted, with her hair tied back and her fingers wrapped around a coffee mug she barely touched. Still, when she saw me, something in her shoulders loosened, and that scared me more than Wade's messages. I asked her to tell me everything from the beginning, not about us, about Wade. She said they met at a local sports bar during a qualifying game. He was charming then, generous, always talking about community, kids, opportunity. He said he wanted to build a youth soccer program. Emily believed him because wanting to believe good things about a man is not stupidity. Sometimes it is just hope without protection. Then he moved into her apartment. Then his mail started arriving. Then Blake and Travis came over late at night with boxes of shirts, raffle flyers, prepaid cards, and cheap tablets. Wade said they were organizing events. When Emily asked why a charity needed so many payment apps, he told her she did not understand business. After a while, he checked her phone, told her what to wear, and said if she left, everyone would think she had helped him and run when things got hard. That was not love. That was a hostage note with kisses in between. I asked why she signed the form. She looked at me ashamed and said Wade had cried that night. He said the kids would lose their field deposit if the payment account did not go live before the next World Cup watch party. He said he could not use his name because an old medical bill had messed up his credit. Emily signed because she thought she was helping him help children. Carol reached across the table and put her hand over Emily's. I sat there thinking about the QR code taped to Linda's fence and the smiling donors scanning money into something Emily had never seen. I knew then I could not just be the man she liked. I had to be careful, because careful was the only thing Wade had not expected from me. I told Emily not to contact him except in writing, to save every message, to request her credit report, and to freeze her credit immediately. She asked how I knew all this. I said my job had taught me that fraud rarely starts with a stranger. A lot of times it starts with somebody who knows exactly which drawer you keep your documents in. Her face changed. She said Wade still had her old laptop. That sentence put a new weight on the table. Carol drove Emily to freeze her credit that afternoon. Marcus and I went to my apartment, and he sent me every photo he had from the watch party. I was not looking at faces. I was looking at the fundraiser table, the QR code, the clipboard, the envelopes, the people standing behind Wade. In one photo, Blake held a card reader. In another, Travis carried a lockbox to Wade's truck while the game was still on. Then Marcus found the clearest photo. Wade stood in front of the table with his arms around Blake and Travis. The flyer behind them said the fundraiser was sponsored by Great Lakes Youth Cup. I searched the state charity registry. Nothing came up. I searched the name with Erie, soccer, non-profit, youth fund, and every variation I could think of. There were posts, flyers, and donation links, but no legitimate registration that matched. A youth club had a similar name, but a different logo, board, website, and no mention of Wade. That was not a paperwork mistake. That was a costume. I told Marcus we needed to slow down and not accuse anybody without proof. Even saying it felt strange because the proof was gathering around us. Still, pieces were not enough. Wade would call it jealousy. Blake would laugh. Travis would say he just carried boxes. Emily would be easiest to blame because her name was probably on the account. That was the trap. Wade had built the door in her name. For the next 2 weeks, Emily stayed with Carol. I saw her almost every day, but we moved carefully, afraid one wrong step would break everything. We were not officially together. We were not nothing either. One night outside Carol's house, Emily told me she was afraid I only cared because I felt sorry for her. I told her pity would have been easier. Pity goes home at night. What I felt stayed. She cried then, but quietly, almost angrily, like she hated giving Wade any more evidence that he had damaged her. I reached for her hand. She let me hold it. Then her phone buzzed on the dashboard. The message was from Wade. It said, "Tell your bank boy the Jersey money cleared under your name. If I go down, you go first." I read it twice. Emily read it once and turned white. That was his first real mistake. Threats are ugly when they are emotional. They are useful when they are specific. Wade had just connected himself, Emily, the fundraiser, the money, and me in one sentence. I told Emily not to answer. She nodded, shaking. I took a screenshot, then had her forward the message to a new email account we created only for evidence. The next morning, I asked a supervisor I trusted, without using names, what someone should do if a person was using another person's identity for fake fundraising. She told me exactly what I needed to hear. Document everything, freeze credit, contact the payment platforms, file an identity theft report, and do not warn the person doing it. Do not warn him. That part mattered. Wade expected panic. He expected Emily to call him crying. He expected me to puff my chest and send some stupid threat he could screenshot. He expected Marcus's family to split into gossip and exhaustion. He did not expect silence with receipts. So we stayed quiet. Emily requested records from the payment company using the information she remembered from the form. At first they refused because she did not have the full login. Then she sent her ID and an identity theft statement. 2 days later, an email arrived confirming there was an account attached to her name, her social security number, and an address she did not recognize. The address belonged to Blake. Emily stared at the screen in my apartment while Carol stood behind her, and Marcus paced near the window. I watched the way her hands hovered over the keyboard, like touching the email might make it more real. The account had processed donations from watch parties, jersey raffles, and online links. The company would not release everything without a formal request, but they confirmed enough. Enough can be more frightening than everything. That same evening, Linda called from Erie. Wade had shown up at another neighborhood watch party, wearing the same US jersey and telling people Emily had run off with a credit union guy after stealing charity money. He said he was trying to protect the kids and clean up her mess. Blake and Travis stood beside him while he said it. Emily did not scream. She did not cry. She just sat down slowly on my couch and whispered, "He is making me the thief." I wanted to tell her nobody would believe him, but people believe the first confident person who gives them a clean story. Wade had confidence. Emily had shame. That was why he had chosen her. The next day, something worse arrived. A letter came to Carol's house addressed to Emily. Inside was a copy of a loan application for $15,000 from an online lender. Emily's name was on it. Her social security number was on it. Blake's address was on it. The listed income was false. The purpose was sports equipment. At the bottom there was an electronic signature. Emily covered her mouth and said she had never seen it before. Carol called it fraud. Marcus called it enough. I did not call it anything yet. I took the papers, photographed every page, and told Emily to put the original back in the envelope. Anger makes you touch everything. Fear makes you throw things away. Evidence needs you to do neither. Then I noticed the date on the application. It had been submitted the Friday morning before I ever met Emily. For the first time since Wade started threatening us, the floor shifted under the whole story. He had not used my arrival as the reason to commit fraud. He had already been doing it. He had only used me as the excuse when Emily finally ran. That was when I stopped feeling like a man caught in another man's relationship and started feeling like a witness who had walked into a crime halfway through. Emily leaned against my kitchen counter and said maybe she should go back to Erie and talk to him face to face. She thought if she looked him in the eye, he might stop. I said no. So fast she blinked. Then I softened my voice and told her Wade did not want a conversation. He wanted access. Her phone buzzed again. This time the message was not from Wade. It was from Travis. It said, "You better fix what you started before game night. Wade is done being nice." Under it was a photo of Carol's house taken from across the street. Carol locked the front door. Marcus moved to the window. Emily stood in my kitchen, holding the phone like it had turned into something alive. My chest went cold, but my head became very clear. This was no longer a bad ex trying to scare a woman. This was 3 men protecting money. I called the non-emergency police line. Then I called the lender listed on the application. Then I called the payment platform. I used calm words because calm words get written down better. Emily sat beside me while I spoke, and when the officer asked if she wanted to make a report, she said yes before fear could talk her out of it. Wade had mistaken her silence for weakness. What he did not know was that Emily had finally stopped protecting the man who had turned her name into a weapon. The police report did not make Emily feel safe. That was the first thing I learned about doing the right thing. People tell you to file a report like the paper itself will stand between you and the person threatening you. But when we walked out of that small station with a case number in Emily's hand, Wade was still breathing, still angry, still close enough to send another man to photograph Carol's house. Emily folded the paper twice, then once more, until it was a little square in her palm. She did not look relieved. She looked like someone had just made the danger official. The officer had listened, taken the messages, copied the photo Travis sent, and told Emily to keep all communication. He also said fraud cases could take time. That sentence made my stomach tighten because Wade was not moving like a man who feared time. He was moving like a man who planned to use it. On the ride back, Emily kept staring out the window. Marcus sat beside me, silent for once. Nobody wanted to say what we all knew. Wade had already made his public version. Now he was going to punish Emily for challenging it. That night, we moved Emily out of Carol's spare room and into Marcus's apartment. Marcus lived in a secured building with cameras, and his roommate was away for 2 weeks. Emily hated needing that much help, but she hated the photo more. Before she went inside, she stopped on the sidewalk and said she felt like every place she stayed became unsafe for the person helping her. I told her that was exactly how men like Wade worked. They made victims feel expensive to love. She looked at me then, and I saw the question she was afraid to ask. Was she becoming expensive to me? For 3 days, Wade went quiet. No calls, no messages, no blocked numbers, no threats through Blake or Travis. I should have been grateful. Instead, the silence made me more nervous than the noise. Quiet from Wade did not feel like peace. It felt like someone loading a gun in another room. Then Linda called Marcus on speaker, while Emily and I were sorting screenshots by date. Linda's voice shook. She said Wade had announced a massive final World Cup fundraiser for the following Saturday at O'Malley's, a sports bar near the lake. He was calling it the Unity Match Drive. He had posted that every dollar would go towards scholarships for local kids, and he had added one sentence at the bottom. After recent betrayal by someone close to this mission, we will not stop serving our community. Emily closed her eyes. There it was. He did not need to say her name. He only needed to point the crowd. Linda said people were asking questions. Some believed Wade, some did not. But the post had already been shared all over town because the match was huge, the bar was popular, and Wade had promised a signed national team jersey as the main raffle prize. Marcus cursed under his breath. Carol told Linda not to go near the event. Linda said she had to, because Wade was using her neighborhood, her family, and her reputation. Then she said something that changed the room. She had found the original flyer template on her old laptop because Wade had asked her to print the first batch months ago. The QR code image on the flyer was still saved in the folder. I asked Linda to email it to me. 5 minutes later, I scanned the code with a separate phone, careful not to donate anything. The link redirected twice before landing on a payment page with Emily's name appearing in the account description. Emily saw it and covered her mouth. Wade was still collecting money through her name after she had reported him. That was not arrogance anymore. That was a countdown. The next morning, Emily called the officer and added the new evidence. I contacted the payment platform's fraud department again, gave them the active fundraiser link, the police case number, the identity theft claim, and the threats. By noon, the donation page was frozen. By 2, Wade knew. His message came from a fresh number, clean and short. "You just touched my money." Emily stared at it, trembling. I took the phone and set it on the table before she could respond. Then another message came. "Tell Jeff I know where he works." That one was for me. That was how Wade worked. He made ordinary life feel borrowed. 2 nights before the fundraiser, Emily got an email from the online lender. Her fraud dispute had triggered an internal review. They attached metadata from the loan application. The IP address was not enough for us to understand, but the device name was Blake iPad. Marcus read it out loud. Blake had not just helped Wade carry boxes. His device had submitted the fraudulent loan. Emily's hands stopped shaking, not because she was calm, but because anger had finally become stronger than fear. She said, "He used my name," and Blake clicked the button. That sentence mattered. It gave the monster more than one face. Linda called again that night. She had decided to attend the event with her brother and 2 cousins, not to support Wade, but to watch. Marcus wanted to go. Emily said she wanted to go too. I said no. She looked at me with a coldness I had never seen from her before. She said she was done hiding while Wade stood under flags and called her a thief. I said I understood, but showing up could be dangerous. She said danger had already found her in every room where she tried to be quiet. That was the first time I saw the woman Wade had been trying to bury. We did not argue long. We made a plan instead. Nobody would confront Wade alone. Nobody would touch him. Nobody would accuse him without recording. Emily would stay near Linda. Marcus would keep his phone recording in his shirt pocket. I would bring printed copies of the police report receipt, the frozen payment notice, the lender letter with Blake's device name, and screenshots of Wade's threats. Carol said we should give everything to the detective and stay away. She was right, but by then the bar had become the place where Wade planned to turn Emily into the criminal in front of everyone who knew her. Sometimes the safest choice protects your body and lets someone else murder your name. Saturday came cold and bright. O'Malley's was already packed when we arrived. US jerseys everywhere, flags on the walls, people shouting at pre-game commentary. The fundraiser table sat near the entrance, bigger than before, with balloons, raffle tickets, donation envelopes, and a cardboard sign that said, "For the kids." Wade stood behind it like a mayor. Blake was on his left with a tablet. Travis was on his right with a metal cash box. I noticed the QR code on the sign had been covered with a new printed square, new account most likely, same lie wearing fresh makeup. Emily stopped just inside the doorway. Her face went pale, but she did not turn around. Linda took her hand. Marcus moved behind us. Wade saw her within seconds. His smile opened slowly, like he had been hoping she would come. He lifted both hands and called across the bar, loud enough for half the room to hear. "Well, look who finally showed up. Everybody be careful with your wallets." People turned. Emily froze. Wade had turned one secret into a room full of witnesses. A few people laughed nervously. Others stared. I stepped forward, but Emily touched my arm without looking at me. She did not want me to rescue her, not like that. Wade walked around the table, enjoying every step. He said Emily had a lot of nerve coming to an event after what she had done. Linda told him to stop. Wade pointed at Linda and said she was too soft to see when family got used. Then he looked at me and smiled. And there he is, the credit union hero. "You teach her how to freeze charity money, Jeff." The room shifted again. The word charity did exactly what he wanted. It made him sound wounded and made Emily look dirty. I said, loudly enough for the closest people to hear, that Emily had filed an identity theft report because accounts were opened in her name without her control. Wade laughed. He said that was convenient. Blake shook his head like a disappointed church deacon. Travis tapped the cash box with his fingers. Then Wade said the cruel sentence that finished him without him knowing it. Nobody is going to believe a woman who signed the paperwork and ran off with another man. Emily flinched, but she did not break. Marcus moved closer, recording. One of the bartenders lowered the volume on the television, and that somehow made the whole thing worse. Now every word had space to land. I pulled the folder from under my arm. Wade's eyes flicked to it, just once, but I saw it. I said the lender had already confirmed the fraudulent application came from Blake's device. Blake's face changed before Wade could stop him. It was small, but guilt has a reflex. Wade laughed too loudly. He said paperwork could be faked. I said the payment platform had frozen the donation account attached to Emily's identity because of a fraud report. Travis stopped tapping the cash box. Emily took one step forward. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. She said she never stole from kids. She said she never controlled that money. She said Wade used her name because he knew people trusted her more than they trusted him. Wade leaned in and said, low but still audible, "You really want me to show them what you signed?" Emily looked at him and said yes. That one word took something from him. He had expected pleading. He had expected panic. He had expected her to protect herself by protecting him. Instead, she invited the weapon. Wade turned red. He grabbed a folder from under the table and slapped papers onto the raffle table. He said there was her signature, her authorization, her responsibility. People crowded closer. He pointed at the signature like a prosecutor. I looked at the page and felt the first real turn of the day. The signature was dated the same Friday morning as the loan application. The morning before Emily had met me. The morning Wade had told everyone she betrayed the fundraiser because of me. I said that out loud. Wade said I was twisting it. I asked Emily where she had been that Friday morning. She said at work, at the dental office, clocked in from 8 to 5. Linda said she could confirm it. Emily said her manager could too. Then a woman near the bar spoke up. She was older, wearing a red scarf and holding a soda. She said she was Emily's office manager, Denise, and Emily had been at the front desk that entire Friday because 2 hygienists had called out. The room changed, not loudly, not dramatically. It changed like a door locking behind Wade. Wade pointed at Denise and said she did not know what she was talking about. Denise took out her phone and said she had the schedule app. Emily was clocked in. She had never left. Blake stepped back from the table. Travis picked up the cash box. That was the mistake that made the police stop watching from outside. I did not know officers were already there until the front door opened and 2 uniformed men came in with a plainclothes detective behind them. Later, I found out the fraud department had flagged the replacement donation link that morning, and Linda had also called the officer assigned to Emily's report when she saw Wade setting up a new QR code. At that moment, all I saw was Wade's face losing its shape. The detective asked Wade to step away from the table. Wade immediately started talking. Too fast, too loud. He said Emily was unstable, that I worked in banking and knew how to manipulate records, that Marcus's family had always hated him. The detective let him talk for about 10 seconds, then asked Blake to set down the tablet. Blake did not. He turned like he was going to walk toward the hallway. An officer blocked him. Travis moved toward the side door with the cash box pressed against his thigh. The second officer ordered Travis to stop. Travis kept moving. The officer grabbed his arm, and the cash box hit the floor. Envelopes spilled out, some with names written on them, some with cash still inside. The bar went silent except for the television. Wade yelled that the money was for children. The detective said, "Then you will have records." Wade had no answer. That was the moment everyone saw the charity costume tear open. The officers separated them near the entrance. Blake kept saying he only handled tech. Travis kept saying he only collected envelopes. Wade kept saying Emily signed everything. But every excuse pushed them farther from each other. 3 men who had walked in as a team suddenly became 3 strangers trying to survive the same fire. The detective asked Emily if she was willing to make a statement there or at the station. She said at the station. Her voice was small again, but this time small did not mean weak. It meant controlled. Wade heard her and snapped. He called her ungrateful. He said he made her important. He said before him she was just another pretty receptionist waiting to be chosen. I stepped between them without thinking. An officer moved faster and told Wade to turn around. Then Wade looked straight at Emily and said, "You will come crawling back when they see you signed it." Emily did not answer. Denise did. She said, "She was at work, Wade." It was such a simple sentence, no drama, no insult, but it hit harder than any shouting because it took away the only shield he had left. The officers put Wade in handcuffs first, Blake next, Travis last, still trying to explain why he had the cash box if he was just helping. People watched with phones up, but nobody cheered. It was too ugly for cheering. It was a public collapse, and everybody there knew they had almost donated to a lie. As Wade passed Emily, he tried to hold her eyes. She looked at him once, then looked away. That was how she took the ending back. At the station, the statement took hours. Emily had to repeat things she had spent months surviving. Dates, messages, forms, threats, old passwords, Wade's access to her laptop, Blake's address, Travis's cash collections, the watch parties, the raffles, the loan letter, the photo of Carol's house. Every answer cost her something, but she kept going. Arrest is not the same as repair. It is only the first time the damage has to answer out loud. Over the next few weeks, the case became bigger than any of us expected. Investigators found multiple donation accounts, several fake invoices, 2 fraudulent loan attempts, and transfers routed through prepaid cards. The Real Youth Club, whose name Wade had imitated, released a statement saying they had no connection to him. Parents came forward with raffle receipts. A local reporter called it a World Cup charity fraud scheme. Emily hated that phrase because her name appeared in early documents before the articles were corrected. She stopped reading comments after one stranger said women always played innocent when money disappeared. I wanted to answer every person. She told me not to. She said she had spent enough of her life reacting to people who did not deserve her breath. That was how healing started for her, not with peace, with refusal. Wade, Blake, and Travis were charged with fraud-related offenses, identity theft, and intimidation connected to the threats. I am not a lawyer, and I will not pretend I understood every count, but I understood the sound of Emily breathing when the detective told her they had enough to show she had been used, not protected. She cried in my car after that meeting. Not pretty tears, angry, exhausted tears. She said she felt stupid for signing anything. I told her Wade had not chosen her because she was stupid. He had chosen her because she was trusted. That made her cry harder. We did not become some perfect couple overnight. Emily had nightmares. She checked locks twice. Sometimes she pushed me away before I could disappoint her. Sometimes I got too protective and had to learn that loving her did not mean managing her fear for her. But we kept choosing each other in small ways that did not look dramatic enough for anyone else to notice. She got her own apartment 3 months after the arrests. I helped carry the couch, but she signed the lease herself. She found a new job at a pediatric clinic in Columbus. She rebuilt her credit file piece by piece, dispute by dispute, letter by letter. The fraudulent loan was removed. The payment accounts were closed. The first time she invited me over for dinner, she burned the garlic bread and laughed so hard she had to sit down. I remember thinking I had never heard that sound from her before, without fear attached to it. That was when I knew love was not the weekend in Erie. It was not the porch or the diner, or the way she looked at me when she needed saving. Love was watching her become someone who did not need saving and realizing I wanted to stand beside her even more. 6 months later, Wade took a plea. Blake did too. Travis tried to fight longer, then folded when the cash deposits and messages were presented. They were sentenced to prison time, restitution, probation terms, and no contact orders. The exact legal language felt cold compared to what they had done, but when Emily heard the words, she closed her eyes and held my hand under the bench. Wade did not look at her when he was led away. Maybe he finally understood that attention was not power when everyone could see the truth. After the hearing, Linda, Marcus, Carol, Denise, Emily, and I went to a small restaurant near the courthouse. Nobody called it a celebration, but that was what it was. Linda raised a glass of iced tea and said, "To receipts." Everybody laughed, even Emily. Then Emily looked at me across the table, and for the first time since I had known her, there was no apology in her smile. A year after the first fundraiser, during the next World Cup summer event, the Real Youth Club held a legitimate charity match in Erie. They asked Emily to attend because she had helped investigators identify several families who had donated under false pretenses. She almost said no. Then she said yes, but only if the money went through the club's official account and every donor got a receipt. That was my Emily. The event was held on a clean field behind a school, not in Wade's shadow. There were kids running drills, parents under tents, music playing, and a real table with real board members answering real questions. No fake QR codes, no locked cash boxes. No man in a jersey pretending generosity was proof of innocence. Emily stood beside the registration table, wearing a simple blue dress, hair moving in the wind, laughing with Linda. I watched her from near the fence and remembered the first time I had seen Wade's hand on her wrist. Back then, he had said she already knew where home was. He was wrong. Home was never the place where someone held you still and called it love. Home was the place where your name was safe. I proposed that evening after the event, not in front of a crowd because Emily had already had enough of crowds deciding what her life meant. I took her to the edge of the field after everyone started packing up. The sun was low, the grass smelled freshly cut, and a group of kids were still kicking a ball at the far goal. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the ring box. I told her I had loved her when she was afraid, but that was not why I wanted to marry her. I wanted to marry the woman who walked back into the room that tried to shame her, told the truth with her voice shaking, and still kept enough softness to laugh at burned garlic bread. Emily covered her face. For one awful second, I thought I had overwhelmed her. Then she nodded before I even finished asking. She said yes. We got married the following spring in Linda's backyard, the same place where Wade had once tried to humiliate her. Emily chose it on purpose. She said she wanted the memory rewritten, not avoided. There were flowers along the fence, white chairs on the grass, and a small US flag still hanging near the patio. Marcus stood beside me. Linda cried before the music started. Carol handed tissues to everybody like she had planned for disaster. Denise came too, and Emily hugged her for so long that people started crying again. When Emily walked toward me, I did not see the woman from the porch who looked down when Wade spoke. I saw the woman who had taken every paper he used against her and turned it into the road back to herself. Her vows were simple. She said I never made her feel owned. I said she taught me that love without dignity is just another kind of cage. We both cried, but nobody there looked embarrassed by it. At the reception, Marcus tapped his glass and said he had invited me to Erie for a watch party, not a federal-level emotional disaster. Everybody laughed. Then he looked at Emily and said the best thing his family ever did was bring her somewhere Wade could not follow. Later, when the music slowed and the yard lights came on, Emily and I danced near the same porch where Wade had once tried to mark her as his. She leaned her head against my chest and whispered, "I used to think leaving him ruined my life." I asked what she thought now. She looked up at me, smiling through tears, and said, "I think leaving him gave me one." I held her tighter. Some people think justice is only watching the bad guy get punished. That is part of it. I will not pretend it was not satisfying to see Wade, Blake, and Travis arrested after they used charity, children, and a woman's name as cover for their greed. But real justice came later. It came when Emily signed her own lease, when she opened her own bank account without shaking, when her name was cleared, when she stood at a real fundraiser and nobody whispered thief, when she said yes to a future that belonged to her. Wade once told me not to waste my smile because Emily knew where home was. On our wedding night, as the last guests left Linda's yard and Emily stood beside me in her white dress, holding my hand under the porch light, I finally understood the answer I should have given him. I did not waste my smile. I saved it for the day she found her way home. What would you do in this situation? Be honest, or did this remind you of someone? Tell me in the comments. And if this made you think about your own relationship, I left something in the description that can help you build something stronger. Subscribe if you want more stories like this every day, and share this with someone who needs to hear this story.